So hello and welcome back to the MCC Brussels podcast. This week, delighted to be joined by Alice Cordier, a co-founder and president of Collective Nemesis and all-round troublemaker in France. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you. Thank you.
And welcome back to the podcast, our colleague Agnieszka Kolek, our head of cultural engagement.
Thank you for having me.
So this week on the podcast, we're going to be taking a look at a weekend of big elections across Europe, some threats to free speech here in Brussels and beyond, and taking a look at the EU elite's weird obsession with migration numbers. So our podcast viewers might be almost getting bored of us talking about another week goes by, another event that we're hosting is coming into trouble with Antifa. But Alice, this must be a almost weekly occurrence for you too. I'm sure this is nothing you've faced before.
Yes, it's when I going in one city, when I'm create conference, when I make conference, I have my fan base.
Yes.
Antifa comes, and it's perfect because it's a beautiful publicity for me, in fact.
And why do they? You've come to us this week, and I have to admit, we've got plenty of people who come to our conferences who you might think would be kind of the kind of people that Antifa would really dislike, but they seem to hold a special dislike for you. But why is that?
Because I don't know exactly, perhaps it's the same generations, so they imagine it's more easy to fight against me. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And another thing is I'm activist in the streets. Mm-hmm. I create demonstrations in the streets against immigration. When I at the beginning of the association, for example, we are in the street with poster, and we have got new message, new form of feminist, conservative feminism, and for them it's very strange to see that they are not. It's not an habit for them to see right-wing women in the street who are said something different. I said I am feminist. You are not feminist, and for them it's horrible to see that. For them, I'm and my organization is dangerous. So for them, they justify the violence against women because we are fascist for them.
Yeah, and I want to bring in Agnieszka in a minute, because this is something we've identified, the fact that if you're a woman and you're a feminist, but you don't toe the line of the kind of liberal consensus, they seem to hate you even more than they would someone who's maybe a kind of a horrible kind of old-fashioned kind of man, right? But tell us a little bit, very briefly, tell us a little bit more about what your collective has been doing that's kind of caused such outrage.
What is the aim of Nemesis?
Yeah.
Yes. So we are a new organization because we are the association was born in 2019 in Paris, and it's at the beginning we have nothing, only fair in the streets. Only we was very angry because today feminists don't speak. They are not speaking about the new form of violence. And my little sister knows this violence in the streets, sexual harassment, when she was teenagers. I don't support it. And I see a lot of women become some victims in the street. And when I discovered the Eastern country in Europe, I discovered the situation in France is not normal. But I know the situation since I was child, so I don't know the problem. And when I'm going in Slovakia and when I'm going in Hungary, I see the freedom of women in the streets. I can wear what I want. I can go what I want, where I want. Sorry, I can go in the night in the street if I want. In France, it's not the same. In France become very difficult for women. And I think it's a new form of violence. Feminists don't want to speak about this. Progressive feminists don't want to speak about it because they are in the left wing, in fact. It's not feminist, it's left-wing activist. And it's the difference between them and me. And it was important to create a new form of feminist, a conservative feminist, who are fighting against immigration, against the impact of Islam in our country. Because if we don't do that, we will have lot of victims, and nobody speak about these victims. So it was important to create another voice for women.
Yeah, no, that's super important. And tonight's event, which Antifa are trying to cancel, is actually looking at that precise theme around what conservatives should be doing to kind of make that connection between the realities that women face every day and conservative kind of principles such as the importance of borders. So our viewers will be able to catch that event. We'll definitely be putting out video from that. But Agnieszka, to circle back, there's something in this Antifa attack that is specifically aimed at women, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. For me, what is clear that the left never really cared about women. This is a proof because it shows that what they care is to get the vote, to get them behind the political actions that they planned for them. And if in any way they steer away from that, and if a question what's going on, they will be punished, and they will be severely punished. And I think we see it very clearly. They almost feel like an ownership over women. It's actually quite terrifying because it's a little bit like they treat the women like cattle, that they should just toe the line, and if they steer away, it's not even to oppose them with arguments or create a different event to show where we make mistakes or maybe we don't get the numbers right. No, this is straight away outright violence. You need to shut up and go to your place. And I'm very glad that they're actually showing their true faces. Because then there is no mistake made. That this was never about women. It was about political goals that over the years they keep changing. So at first you come, it's a little bit like grooming. At first you come and you say, oh, I really care about you. I think, you might have issues with, I don't know, with your partner or maybe you don't have access to abortion. We really care about the issues that are important to you. But then actually when there are issues that are really pressing, and for me what is actually shocking in what Alice said is that she never realized that this is not normal, what's happening in France, that women are constantly harassed in the street, also children, because she's mentioning her sister. So this is not just about grown-up women maybe going to a party and coming back home. No, these are school girls going to school, on the way back from school being sexually harassed. So what about children, right? Yes. Not only women's rights, but children, child protection. So it clearly shows that this became normalized. So when she went abroad and she actually noticed that it could be different reality, it was completely shocking to her. So I think very good that they're showing who they are.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to talk about this actually this week anyway, directly on the topic of immigration. So we should cover it. Because one thing I've been noticing that I wanted to discuss on this podcast for a while is that the way that migration is framed increasingly by our elites has very little to do with any kind of benefits that migration might bring. So before they used to talk about, migration, it means it's very important for the economy. It brings lots of cultural enrichment. People have access to different foods and cultures and all these kind of things, right? But now they've even given up on making that case, as I think for reasons that both of you have discussed. And instead, they've become increasingly attached to just having a figure. So you hear figures such as 400,000 migrants per year or 100,000 asylum seekers, or in Spain's case, they said they needed 1 million more migrants. And I was wondering what this tells us about the state of the migration debate. Alice, has the way that the elites talk about migration, it's almost just a virtue signal now. It doesn't really carry any political content.
It's very strange because, for example, feminists, they're speaking all the time, and it's their aim, about patriarchy. Okay, perhaps in France, we have got a patriarchy. We have got some white people who are fighting their women. It's true. But why, if patriarchy exists, why are they accept some men? Because immigration is a lot of men who comes from a country where Islamist patriarchy is not the same than European patriarchy. In Afghanistan, in some country like that, in their law, you can rape your wife. In fact, it's not the same. So it's no sense. They are fighting against patriarchy, but not when patriarchy come from Islamic country. When some men, because they say that all men, the all men is rape men, they are dangerous for women. Okay, but so if men is dangerous for women, why are you okay to accept a lot of men who comes from country where the Islamic patriarchy is horrible for women?
Yeah. And so, Agnieszka, why, in the absence of any discussion about the benefits or dangers of migration, why have they become so fixated on seemingly ever greater numbers? Is it just virtue signaling on their part?
I don't think it's a virtue signaling. I think this is a different tactic to get voters confused, because also with the social media and kind of the speed of information coming, you try to create an impression that someone is in charge of what's going on. So if you quote numbers and you seem to be good with numbers, so like you have the data, you're working on it, it creates this impression that somehow you are in charge, you know what's going on, there is a plan to it, and it would be in the favor of what the voters want. And again, we are being lied to. The situation where, for example, the Prime Minister of Poland, Tusk, makes very strong speeches. He even wants to break the international law by stopping the right to asylum. Mm-hmm. So there is a tough talk. And then voters that don't follow politics closely, but obviously are concerned about these issues because they are aware of what's happening in Western Europe, they say, oh, he understands it's a threat. He's not going to allow that in Poland. But then they don't follow the information. They don't look at what's happening exactly. So this is all about creating an impression that someone is in charge and is in charge by in a favor of what the voters are concerned about. So I think this is only a tactic.
Yes, I think it's politic. In fact, it's only for politic aim, but it's not for the security of people. It's not for humanity. It's only for political aim.
Yeah, and I'm kind of interested in what that political aim is. And I have this sneaking suspicion that what's going on is that lots of left-wing or centrist parties who used to represent certain political groups like working people or the minorities or whatever groups they used to represent, they don't have a constituency anymore. We see all across Europe that the traditional left-wing parties don't exist or no longer represent left-wing workers. They now represent kind of university graduates or people who live in inner cities or people who work in the European Commission. And so they're kind of searching around for, are they not, some alternative kind of constituency who they can represent. And they feel for some reason that this constituency has probably got something to do with migration.
Well, if we look at the example of Britain, they more and more rely on the voters coming from the migrants and the families of migrants. And this is the new constituency. And then they get interested also more and more in foreign conflicts being play out far away and then influencing the internal politics of the country. So it's Britain, it's France, it's Germany. In Germany, we've seen it with politics in Turkey, how that was influencing the politics in Germany. So I think there could be also that point there. So they want to create an impression that no one will lose out on it.
And also, Alice, lots of times the people who are the loudest supporters of migration never have to deal with the consequences. So it is often in places kind of far away from where they live where the real problems emerge.
You have got some different problems in France, but I think it could be changed. At the beginning, it was the impact of the media. During a lot of time, a lot of media create propaganda goods about the question of immigrations. Mm-hmm. And another thing, I think, is the impact of political people. Because if you know the left wing, like Jean-Luc Mélenchon, this sort of people, they understand one thing, it's the changement of population. And he make a mathematical calcul in the long time. And for him, in 10 years, a lot of population is immigrant population, and he need to make seductions with this population to become perhaps a day president of the Republic. So he understands it. So he don't speak about the poor family French people. Rassemblement National take these people in their vote. So they speak only with the immigration people. And we see that during the last elections. She only when you have got the rank, Mélenchon speak a lot about the situation in Gaza, Palestine. He don't know in a map where is Palestine, okay? But for him, he understands one thing. It's in some districts, immigration districts, people know where is the Palestine, and it's Muslim communities, and they are very. The conflict in the Palestine is very important for these people. So that's why he speaks a lot about this. And you have got some teenagers or some young people, student people in the school who speak a lot with Palestine. So they imagine it's a humanity fight, but they don't see the reality. The right wing do it only for the elections.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to move on to take stock of some of the elections that we had over the weekend, where maybe in some cases, but the migration debate plays out actually in some of these elections, but maybe in some of them not. So we saw elections over the weekend in Romania, in Poland, in Portugal. In Poland, we're about to release a video on this on our channel about it's a very, very complicated election. It's going to be a very, very close second round presidential election. In Romania, it was less close. The kind of challenger anti-establishment candidate didn't do as well as many people thought he was going to do, and has now complained of election interference and all the rest of it. But in Portugal, there was a very strong result for the anti-establishment party Chega. It was the Enough Party, which we quite like that slogan here, as well as the party. But Agnieszka, how do we take stock of these seemingly different elections? There's not a straightforward kind of single narrative, is there, about that kind of reaction against the mainstream?
I have an impression that we have to take into consideration that with the number of elections playing out, it's very difficult for the establishment to have a full control over everything, and they must prioritize, and depending on the situation, they probably look at the resources and how to deal with it. And obviously, the fact that the platform X didn't comply and censor the voices, and they didn't manage to fully roll out the Ministry of the Narrative Control, which is being mentioned in one of our reports published this week at MCC Brussels. And I recommend to everyone to read this report, because it's really important that we are armed with information and facts so we can resist this attempt to censor the different voices and our ability to make informed choices as voters. So I think probably it's not so easy for the establishment to be able to control all of these elections. There might be differences, apart from differences with the political landscape and the issues the countries are dealing with, that would also play part. So I can guess in Portugal, they have higher issues related to migration, and not just now, but for years. Where in Poland, coalition government is in power only a year and a half. Certain things started to happen already. A lot of decisions are being postponed until after the presidential election. And as I was mentioning earlier, with this tough narrative, a lot of people are buying this tough narrative, and they're thinking that Prime Minister Tusk knows that if he allowed these terrible things to happen in Poland, like in other countries, he would lose the party, he would lose the support, and so on. So I think these differences play part. And then I would also suspect that the way the voting is the way the voting is being done and then counted, I would look into that closer, and not because I just want to claim there is interference, but actually I was talking with one of our guests today, and she made me aware that, and in a sense, I could have known that in Poland the vote is on paper and it's counted. Every single one is counted. We don't have machines counting them. It's people. And obviously you have observers and you have different people of different views counting the votes. Where in Romania, it was in some places, or I would have to double check that, but it was not all counted by hand. So this also makes a difference. So in general, I would say that for us observing these trends and what's happening, we shouldn't have this only the bird's view. We need to also zoom in, look at particular conditions, and then also at how the elections are being done, how are they counted, because it really plays part.
Yeah. Alice, did any of these 3 elections particularly catch your eye? Any interesting things you noticed?
It's interesting, but yes, there's a problem. You speak about this, but another thing is it's incredible to see the impact of the Europe in these elections, in national election. Why Europe say that? We have another thing I said, because during the presidential elections in France, we see some strange thing. The Pope Francis first speak and say, don't vote Marine Le Pen. What is your link with that? And it's very, very strange to see a lot of people who haven't got their words in these elections speak for the people. We see in France, we said a levée de bouclier. It's a lot of people who are speaking a lot to say don't do that, don't vote for these people, and for other people, for progressive candidate, we don't see that, and I think it's very dangerous, and I think I'm very afraid, because I think for the election after, all the time it will be the same game. In fact, Europe say no, don't vote for it, etc.
No, it's an important point, because there's a sense that the European Commission and the EU elites can't help themselves anymore except turn every single election into a referendum on the direction of the EU. So even when an election might not really be about Europe, the European elites are forced to see it as a referendum on their own authority, which can only up the stakes and up the ante.
It's a dictator of Europe. They have got some powers, and they don't have to have these powers. It's not their country. It's not. We are not. You are not Union European. We are friends. We are Romania. We are Hungary. But it's not. They don't have to speak about our elections.
Yeah, and Agnieszka, just to ask you briefly, because I mean we got a video coming out on Poland, but we'll take some predictions later. But it's a uniquely close election, this one, in Poland's recent history.
Yes, that's true. I think actually the Polish elites that are pro further integration with European Union, I think they got quite shocked at the results, because they expected to have higher margin for the progressive candidate Trzaskowski. And then they've seen that actually that the vote for the parties on the right increased. 3 different candidates on the right, they received quite a big number of votes. So at the moment, there is a Project Fear in Poland, being on a turbo speed program to use different psychological tactics, how to force people to vote the right way, because otherwise Poland will be lost and it's all dark.
Yeah. And Alice, France has been dragged into the Romanian election through allegations that the French security services and French diplomats have put a lot of pressure on the Romanian election. So you have the founder of Telegram, Pavel Durov, saying that the head of French secret intelligence had asked him in a special meeting to censor information on the Romanian election. What do you make of these claims?
Yes, and for example, Macron speak about the Romanian election. What is the roles of Macron? Why it is? Don't speak, man. It's not your election, okay? And I think George Simeon denounced that and said, "You are a dictator. Don't speak about my election." And I think it's true. Emmanuel Macron, I don't know his mentality, but I think he's a king, and I think it's very dangerous too. In France, it was a shame. The treatment of Pavel Durov was a big shame for the French people, because we are the country of the freedom of speech, and we are the country of the liberty. And it was in our country that he had some problems. So it's very a shame, yes.
Yeah, well, this is a theme we see with lots of European leaders right across the spectrum, is that the more unpopular they get at home, like Macron, nobody likes Macron in France, the more they feel that they have to show themselves on the international stage, and that's the only place that their authority comes from.
If you want to become the leader of the Commission, European Commission, one day a day, so you have to make something.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's it for us on the MCC Brussels podcast. There's loads going on here at MCC Brussels, so I really urge all of our viewers to stay tuned to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribing for all of our videos, but keep an eye out on our X feed as well, where we're almost daily now uncovering new stuff, whether about the European Union's censorship complex or the challenges we're facing here in Brussels to fight back against attempts to rob us of our freedom of expression. But regardless what happens, we will keep fighting for our right to speak and our right to invite brilliant speakers like Alice to come join us in Brussels. But thanks to Agnieszka.
Thank you.
And thanks to Alice for joining us.
Thank you.